Chapter 37. Final chapter, guys. It took Papa a long time to get strong enough to come home to us in Consacanabrandis. Even then, things never did get quite back to the way they'd been before the accident. When something like that comes along, whether it's an accident or a savvy or a very first kiss, life takes a turn, and you can't step back. All you can do is keep moving forward, and remember what you've learned. The day I turned 14 was bright and sunny. A day with nothing more special or important about it than me getting older. Spring was rolling around again, and Mama was in the kitchen making my cake. It was the cake I'd wanted so badly exactly 1 year ago. The cake with the pink and yellow frosting and the perfect sugar roses. The cake that didn't seem quite so important to me anymore, compared to other things. Papa and I were sitting outside of the porch, rocking away on our very own porch swing, the one that Rocket, Fish, Samson, and I had helped Papa build the previous autumn. Even though us kids had undertaken most of it on account of Papa's head, still not always working right. But having a porch swing, all our own, was something that none of us would give up on either, and we were glad to do it. Our swing wasn't the world's largest like the one up in Hebron, nor was it the world's prettiest. It wasn't even close. But sitting there with Papa, just thinking and listening as we watched the clouds roll by, I knew our swing was the world's best. Ours was a real porch swing, with a real porch to go with it, and a whole house full of love to hold it up. Grandpa Bomba slept in a large wicker chair on the other end of the porch, dreaming of the days when he still had the strength to move mountains. And Fish was sitting on the steps nearby, listening to Gypsy talk to herself as she picked dandelions in the yard with her feet bare and all her clothes on inside out. Fish kept a close eye on her little sister, hollering at her every time she tried to put one of the dandelions in her mouth. "Cut it out, Gypsy," Fish said, as our sister held a yellow flower to her tongue teasingly. "If you put one more of those weeds in your mouth, I'm taking you inside." "Tell Fish to give us a little push," said a voice inside my head. Miss Mermaid swished her tail as I glanced down at Papa's arm. When I looked up at Papa's face, he was rubbing his knuckles against his jaw, smiling. He recognized me that day. That was good. After coming home from Salina Hope Hospital, Papa couldn't always remember what day of the week it was, or whether or not he liked blueberries in his pancakes. He couldn't recall if we lived in Nebraska or Kansas, and didn't understand that we lived in both, or how that had come to be. On the really bad days, he couldn't find the right words for newspaper, or coffee, or jam, or sorry. But on the good days, the best days, like that spring day, on the porch, with the smell of baking cakes drifting out to us through the window, Papa was just Papa, with no hair on his head to cover up the scars from the accident, but as good and sweet as ever. "Hey, Fish," I called out. "Papa and I need a push." Fish turned his attention away from Gypsy and her dandelions. He screwed up his face for a second and sent a gust of wind that rocked the porch swing hard beneath me and Papa, almost tipping us right off. "Whoa, not so hard," I laughed. "Sorry," said Fish with a mischievous grin, giving us another push of wind, a little gentler this time. With a creak and a bang of the screen door, Mama stepped out onto the porch, her apron perfectly clean, and her cheeks pink from working in the kitchen. She looked around at all of us. "Where's Samson Samson's upstairs," I told her. "He's helping Rocket pack." "Knowing Samson, he's probably packed himself right into one of Rocket's suitcases," muttered Fish. "No one will find him until Rocket gets up to Uncle Autry's." 18, and free to make his own way, Rocket was catching a bus to Wyoming the very next morning, on his way to spend the summer, or longer, with Mama's brother and his family, in a place even closer to the middle of nowhere than Consacanabrandis. On Uncle Autry's ranch, it wouldn't matter how many sparks Rocket unleashed. There was no one around for miles to notice or care. Mama and Grandpa had tried to convince Rocket that he was doing fine, that he could scumble his sparks as well as anyone could expect of a young man, and that with a bit more work, and a few more years, he'd have no worries at all. But Rocket had never been quite the same. After that day in Salina Hope Hospital 1 year before, he'd lost his swagger and his bluster. Not once since then had Rocket bragged about his savvy or teased me about my own. He had watched Fish take control of his storms with brotherly pride and quiet envy. But Wyoming would give him the open wide open spaces to work outside and sleep under the stars, giving him room to feel less burdened by his electric savvy. "How are we going to make the station wagon work without you?" I'd asked Rocket when he announced that Uncle Autry had invited him to come and stay. Rocket had chuckled and popped a few playful sparks. "I suppose Papa will have to break down and buy that old tin can of a clunker a new battery," he said. It was going to be strange not having Rocket around, especially now that Fish could scumble well enough to start high school in Hebron in the fall. Soon, I'd be the only one growing moss in the pickle jars and painting pictures with Mama and having school at home. My savvy couldn't harm other people or cause any damage. But Mama and I had decided on homeschool anyway, just to be sure. "A year or two to gain your strength and learn how to scumble your savvy certainly won't hurt you, Mibs," Mama had said. "After that, you'll be ready to take on the world." Mama didn't realize that I'd already taken on the world, and won. I'd grown used to all the voices inside my head, and knew which ones to pay attention to and which ones to ignore. The same went for all the voices outside of my head, and this newfound strength must have shown like a mark on my skin. For the next time I ran into Ashley Bing and Emma Flint up in Hebron, those girls kept their mouths shut, without even an echo of Missy Pissy thrown my way. "Is that boy of yours coming over for the party?" Miss Mermaid asked, breaking into my thoughts about Rocket's departure. "Yes, Papa," I answered. "Will's coming over after lunch." It turned out that neither God nor Miss Rosemary had held my wrong choices against me for too long, after all us kids ran off in that big pink bus. We Beaumonts were back to attending church services with Pastor Meeks and his family, and Will and Bobby were now regular visitors in Consacana-Branzis. "And that girl?" Miss Mermaid cut into my thoughts again. "Bobby's coming over too, Papa," I answered with a laugh. "She wants to say goodbye to Rocket before he leaves." "Humph," Papa said out loud. Papa humphed out loud, and Miss Mermaid snapped her tail. Papa always pretended that he wasn't fond of Will and Bobby. I suppose he didn't want to see us kids growing up all around him. But because of Miss Mermaid and because of my savvy, I always heard what Papa was thinking, and I knew that he was glad that we'd made new friends. Friends who knew all about our family's extra special know-how, and liked us all the same. With Rocket moving away, and Samson and Gypsy still years away from their own most important birthdays, things looked as though they might settle down and stay peaceful for a time. But I knew a secret. A secret that I wasn't supposed to know yet. A secret that might make things get interesting again by winter. Just because Mama was perfect, that didn't mean she couldn't forget things sometimes. So when she was on the phone with Miss Rosemary earlier in the week, getting the perfect recipe for marshmallow pie, and all she could find was a pen but no paper, Mama forgot about ink and savvies and feelings and listening. And she wrote that recipe right onto the back of her hand. She wrote it in pretty red ink. Pretty noisy red ink. That was how I found out that Mama was thinking she might be pregnant, and that a new little Beaumont was on its way. But that day on the porch swing, that day with its sunshine and its perfect cake, that wasn't a day for spoiling secrets. So I kept my mouth shut, and rocked in the swing with Papa. If only my savvy worked in reverse, I thought again, and not for the first time. If only I could draw a smiling sun on the back of my hand, then everyone around me could know exactly how I felt, exactly how happy I was at that perfect moment. For just then, things were quiet, and they'd stay quiet for a good long time, at least as good and long as it took Samson to turn 13. And who could guess what might happen then? And then here's a picture of Papa's tattoo, the mermaid, and Bobby's temporary tattoo. Okay, guys, this is it. The end of Savvy audiobook. Now, here's the deal, okay? There's 2 more of these books, and they are really informative, and they're actually really good. So if you'd like me to read those, please let me know in the comments, and I will totally do them for you. And also, if you haven't seen Powerless by Matthew Cody, I have the full audiobook on my YouTube channel, so be sure to check that out. And if you like superpowered kids and you liked this story, you'll probably like Powerless. It's a really good book. Thank you guys so much for sticking with me and watching. If you have any books other than the second books of Savvy, and the second two books, and the second two books for Powerless, please let me know in the comments if you have a specific book that you'd like me to read. Thank you so much, and I'll see you guys probably pretty soon.